Amazing Women Speak podcast, inspiring and motivating every Black woman to own, honor, and execute her amazing, individually and collectively, as it was established at birth.
Good evening and Happy New Year. So it's time for the first episode of 2023 for Amazing Women Speak, and this should be a phenomenal conversation. Amazing Women Speak is a celebration of women where we strive to bring conversations to uplift, inspire, and motivate you to own, honor, and execute your amazing as it was established at birth. So I'm Crystal Gunn, founder of the Amazing Women Network and host of Amazing Women Speak. And if you're watching this live, please share it with your friends so they can join in on this conversation. And if by chance you're watching the replay, copy the link and post it and share it. Don't keep this conversation to yourself. Bless somebody with it. So we've all heard the term raise the bar, and we usually look at the bar as something to aspire to reach. And society has created this bar for women of color, especially Black women. So you must have straight hair, a certain body type. You got to carry this bag, wear these clothes. You can't be too dark, and you have to be 3 times as smart as your non-Black counterparts. And of course, that list goes on and on. And so I coined this as the bullshit bar. And it's the unattainable, unrealistic, ever-moving, spirit-killing, depression-causing, self-hate evoking bullshit bar. And so if we look at the definition of the word bar, it's a standard, right? It's something that obstructs or prevents passage, to confine or shut in, to keep out, to exclude, to prevent or forbid. That's that bullshit, right? So let's talk about it. Bullshit. Michele, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I can't wait to get this conversation started.
Absolutely. Good evening, all. Welcome to another episode of Amazing Women Speak. So excited to be able to kick off this year with a conversation that we had before and watch it get elevated. I'm really excited. My name is Michele Harper. I am the co-host of these amazing conversations. So very blessed to be able to share this platform with my BFF, who's created space for women of color to come together and to unpack all of the ways in which we allow the bullshit to keep us from being our very best selves. We say no more. We say that we need to give a platform for women to share their voice, to share their story, to celebrate everything that is amazing about them. And I'm excited to have this conversation tonight. It didn't change just because it's 2023. This will still be the fastest hour of your day. So Facebook, we invite you into the conversation. We will be paying attention to the chat features. Jump in, put your comments, put your questions. We will invite you and make you a part of this dynamic conversation. I want to bring in these amazing women, allow them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to launch deep because we know fastest hour of the day, so much to unpack and share. We don't have time for the shallow waters tonight. So let's go deep. Let's start with introductions. Ms. Francyne, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Francyne Walker. I am the founder of Francyne Walker Communications, where I help you shine online as well as offline. And I also am the host of the Francyne Walker Show, where we interview, I would like to steal the word amazing, awesome and amazing and extraordinary guests doing extraordinary things. And I'm excited to be here to dismantle the bar.
Absolutely. Thank you. Look forward to hearing more of your story and all of the ways in which you are touching folks through helping with communication. Really looking forward. Ms. Shelee, come on in here and introduce yourself.
Hello. My name is Dr. Shelee. I am a licensed psychologist and wellness coach, and specifically inner wellness coach. And so focusing on the mental and emotional wellness that we need to create and cultivate within ourselves. I am the owner and founder of the Mental Connect, which is a mental health organization that focuses on shifting the culture and conversation on mental health and the way that we think about it, the way that we talk about it, the way that we teach our children and future generations about it. I too am really excited to be here to talk about the Bullshit Bar and all of the things that came into creating it and how we emphasize it within our lives, even unintentionally. And so looking forward to this conversation and sharing this space with you all.
Wonderful. The good doctor is in the house. Amazing. So I have a thing about that. So you're going to hear me call you doctor for the remainder of the night. I am clear,
Yes.
right? that needs to be honored and celebrated. And we don't do that enough, right? We're not going to minimize whatsoever the accomplishment that comes with going through to come out on the other end to be able to be called doctor.
Because y'all,
You shall honor that.
I done went through some things, right?
Right?
Yeah.
The Bullshit Bar.
How about it? How about it? All right, let's get into this conversation, right? So Crystal gave a really clear framing around the Bullshit Bar and why this bar was created, knowing that it was never designed for us to be able to achieve. Tell me a little bit, good doctor, about the chase of the bar before you realized it was unattainable. What were some of the things that you were doing, living into the ways that we've been socialized?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think even going back in my life from a really young age, I was always that high achieving one, right? So I was up there in my class, and I went to like a predominantly Black school in elementary school and middle school. High school, it was a little more diverse. But again, I'm in this place where it's like, I'm doing what I got to do. I know where I'm trying to go. Like, y'all can't tell me nothing. Okay. And so I went to Michigan State for undergrad.
Go green.
Go white.
Right. So, okay. And, you know, a little bit of a culture shock there. But still, I think for the most part, I was still so unaware of what was naturally pushing and driving me. It was just, well, this is what I'm doing. And so graduated in 3.5 years, doing the thing, immediately applied to my PhD program, was like, bet, got it. And it was there. It was grad school where this identity that I had formed around being smart was challenged. And not because I was unsuccessful. Like, don't get me wrong, the grades were still doing the grades. It was the feedback that I was receiving. This idea that, oh, you're not stoic enough. You don't look and you don't present, and you're too whatever in your sessions. You need to dial it back. You need to shrink and to lessen. And that was such a hard reality for me, because it's literally who I am. It's literally who I am. And there was this idea that there was not space for Shelee-Ann the person to exist as Shelee-Ann the professional. And so then the split started to happen. Like, okay, well, here's what it sounds like over here. Here's what it feels like over here. And that just kept going, because if anybody knows about studying in the field of psychology, they always want something. Like, you get over one hump, there's another hump that's ready. Oh, you need to do this now. And so it was grad school. It was the practicums. It was the internships. It was the pre-doctoral internship. It was the post internship. It was the licensure exam. All of these things that were creating this dissonance within myself, where it just felt like, well, I don't know where I fit in to any of this. And so the identity challenges that started to pop up were strong. I'll kind of pause and leave it there for now. That's kind of where
yeah, we're definitely going to continue to unpack that, right? Because we then have to learn how to redefine, right, for ourselves and create that space, right? Because playing small is not what we are even about to do. Right? Tell us a little bit about your story. When you were chasing the bar, what was that like for you?
Are you talking? Oh, I didn't hear you that part. You're talking to me?
Yes.
Well, I can share in as it relates to professionally and personally. Sometimes the bar, I'll start with personal and come back to the professional. Sometimes the bar can be, as Crystal said, you're not dark enough. You're not light enough. And as I have lost weight in the past, it's like, oh, okay, don't lose too much. Oh, then it's like, but nobody said anything to me when I got too big. So the bar, nobody says anything when you're coming down. But if you're getting big, no, someone will say something to you like, okay, you're getting too small. But if you're getting too big, nobody says anything. So this bar, and it's like, well, what if this, and I always say personal best is personal. So that to me is the bar I set for myself. And a lot of times when I thought about it, the conversation, I said, oh, this is going to be good because this is a bunch of bullshit. In this regard, like not bullshit. Physically, we are held to a standard. And I always think it's man-made. It is man-made. Why are we subjecting ourselves to a man-made metric? And then it's like, these people aren't even qualified to set the metric. Like, that's essentially saying that I am involuntarily assigning someone to tell me you're not worth it because you're not meeting that bar. When I say to myself, oh, but I am. Nothing can ever change the fact that I'm worthy. Nothing. It's immutable. So when I subject myself to that bar, then I'm causing myself to kind of shift my foundation of worthiness. So when I look at when we matriculate, whether it's a job, school, personal, physical aspirations, somebody is always there to say, so what's next? What you gonna do? Yeah, you think you so much now. It's like, but when is there a point when we can just rest in our accomplishments? Just rest in that, just sit in that. You know what I mean? When do we let the bar go, like kick it and realize, wait a minute, how do I want to navigate in this world in a place of self-actualization? And I know even with that is such a personal thing. But if we are constantly subjecting ourselves to this man-made, we got to remember, and I think we also need to point out the fact that it is man-made. Man-made. It's like, and I think we've internalized as women this man-made metric. So just with the weight thing, it's like, okay, don't lose your sister card. Like what's the sister card? What is a sister card? But TNA, what is the sister card? What does that really mean when we come in many shapes and sizes? There's more than the hourglass. That's a bar. That's the bar that we're aspiring to. We're going to the DR. We're getting on the plane on our knees with the butt, so that we don't smash the new butt. I mean, we're getting on the cutting table, on the surgical table, to aspire to this 2% hourglass ideal. And I say 2%, and it could be. I know it's a very small stat where women are an hourglass shape. And I know we've allowed the Kardashians to be a bar. And it's like, but I wasn't even born that way.
Right.
But, and at the end of the day, my personal aspiration or bar, because the word is still there. We just have to change how we use it. For ourselves.
Yeah, right. So it really does talk about the redefining of, right?
Reclaiming.
Right? right?
Yeah.
Like realizing that it was never intended for us, right? We were brought over here under a certain set of circumstances.
Yep.
All of the things that are the level of achievement, level of success was never designed for us. So every time in their eyes we get close, they move the bar. And we continue, come on, Dr. Shelley, right? That part, they continue to move the bar because it was never designed for us.
Yep.
People of color specifically, women of color intentionally were never designed. So when we go off to get our PhDs, when we go off to start our own businesses, the amount of roadblocks that we run into just to get in the door.
And
where
so
for
it's less than.
Right?
It's like, oh, well, that's not it. Oh, wait a minute. So it was
Oh my God.
such and such was doing it. But now when we're doing it, and when we're going into these fields and these industries, all of a sudden, oh, it's no longer aspirational.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah. I mean, professionally, I remember, oh my goodness, I was working towards my bachelor's, got my, I was at Blue Cross because I haven't been there in 10 years. I was at Blue Cross, and it's like, oh, you need this to get into that area. I get my degree, my communications degree. I applied to work in the communications department. I'm ready. I'm suited and booted and cute. And, I got my, all my little 1, 2, 3s together. And I've got a notebook because I'm going to ask questions too, because this needs to be a good fit. People don't understand. An interview is a two-way conversation.
Absolutely.
If you even want to be bothered or deal with or even matriculate in that position or take that position. So I'll never forget. Young chick that don't look like me was held that position before she took on this new position, and she's interviewing me for her past position. And when it came to me asking questions, I had my questions that I wanted to ask. And so I asked the questions, and she shares, and she's given me the terminology that, that would be used in this particular job. And she says, do you know what that is? I says, no. First of all, how would I know if I never worked in that position? So I waited and waited for feedback, at least some kind of letter, rejection letter, and I never got anything. I ended up calling HR, the rep that was handling this particular rec, and said, hey, this is Francyne Walker. I interviewed with Kristen, I'll call her Kristen. And she said, oh, wait a minute, let me check. Yeah, you never got anything? Lady, no, I wouldn't be calling you if I hadn't, if I had gotten something. So essentially she says, oh, here it is. Yeah, it says you didn't get the position because you didn't know certain terminology.
Wow.
Not because I didn't have the degree, not because I didn't have writing samples or any kind of work experience. It was because the bar was the fact that I didn't know a certain terminology related to the job. And you know what I said to her? I said, and neither did she. Neither did she when she started the job.
Correct. And so she had the ability, she was the gatekeeper. And
Absolutely.
She had the ability to create the bar that she wanted to create to keep you from getting the position.
Yeah. And so I tell my aunties at the time, I said, yeah, this is what happened. And they, and my aunties were, my work aunties. I'm telling them what happened. I'm sharing my dismay and disappointment, because the audacity of Kristen and her little bar, the audacity of Kristen to tell me I'm not qualified. First of all, I'm a wordsmith. Second of all, No, I don't know the technology and jargon, the technical terms and jargon of a position that I'm applying
Never had.
for.
Right.
So I told them, and they said, and this is another thing that irks me. She said, my auntie said, wait a minute, were you dressed up? Of course I was dressed up. Yes. I had on a suit. And you were made up and yeah. I mean, that's yeah, yes, She said, oh yeah, that's what it was. And it's like, so that sets a expectation, or this expectation that, oh, so I can't show up suited and booted. I can't show up smart and knowledgeable and able to articulate myself and assertive to ask questions. I can't show up attractive. Okay, so where am I? It was just like, where do I fit?
Right. And how do I show up?
And how do I show up? Because I'm not going to change. I'm like, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change, because in the end, I am disregarding who I am to exist in something that it was going to probably come to some kind of disappointment anyway, had I got the job. Because it was like, this is who I am every day. This is not, oh, I have an interview, let me pull myself together and make a good impression.
Michele has something for that. That she tells us every Monday after she kills us a little bit working out. Michele,
right. So you have to be able to ground yourself in who you are and own that. And so at the end of class on Monday, setting the tone for the week, the message is give them all they can handle and let them choke on the rest.
Ooh.
What you do with the part of me that you cannot handle is a you problem.
Yeah.
I will set a glass of water on this counter and sit down and watch you choke. Because what I will not do is make myself small or, right, play to the game that you want to watch me do this, right? Because you're going to continue to move the bar. Dr. Shelee, how did you find your voice? How did you break out of the, I'm going to keep chasing the bar, to I'm going to use my voice and you can choke on the rest?
Ooh, every time you say it, I have to grab
I love it.
armchairs to make sure I'm holding on. But it's interesting because I actually remember the moment that it pivoted for me.
Wow.
And it came from a place of not having a choice. And I think there's still like residual stuff in there from that, because there is an exposure, there is a rawness that was forced, instead of like, oh, I've got to this place where I'm evolved and I've developed enough, and so here I come. No, I didn't have a choice. And I was at a place, I was at an internship in Texas, and on day one, you know how you walk into a space and you say, oh, something not right here.
Right.
Something not right, but it's internship. So I'm in there, like, and the least amount of power in there. I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm young, I'm an intern. Like, I don't got none of the power in there.
Right.
And there were 3 Black women. And that was the extent of people of color there. Just 3 Black women. Wow. 2 of us were interns. So that power. And so real quick, you started to see that they were already having issues with the misuse of power, with emotional abuse to the Black woman who was there. Yeah. And so we're in this space now, and I'm just like, oh, my body is physically reacting to this now. I ain't never had a panic attack before until that place. And I sat there like, oh, this is death. Got it. And it's interesting. And it was in that year-long internship where, because prior to, I was the observer. So there's a lot going on in the space. And I'm just like,
right.
And I'm observing, like, I have my little thoughts. I talk to my supervisors about it later. And they're like, why didn't you say that in there? Because y'all, that's too much. I didn't have a choice an internship. There wasn't enough voices, and yet the impact was felt in ways that were not okay. And so I had to start to use a voice that, one, I didn't know I had at the time. My voice would crack, it would shake, it would quiver. Every single time I said something in those spaces, and yet I kept going. And yet I kept doing it. And it's interesting because I remember at the end of that year, it was, again, we're not even gonna talk about the year itself. But at the end of that year, it was time for me to apply to jobs. And I was talking to my supervisor, and there were some safe people in there. So I don't want to act like everybody. There was safe people, and I think it's so important to find safe people wherever it is that you find yourself, because it's needed, it's necessary, and it's hard without them. And so I was talking, and I was looking over the requirements for the job that I was interviewing for, and it wanted us to create a faux outreach presentation, like something we would do for the students. It was a college. And so I was like, maybe I'll just do something on time management. And she looked at me and said, but you're not a time management type of person. Like, why are you doing that? And I said, well, I thought about doing like coping with racial trauma, but that feels like a little pow pow to be interviewing for. She said, do it. Because if it's too much for them, then you are not in the right place. That's not the place for you. And I think at that point I was still like, but no, you forget I need a job. Like, I hear you, but I need a job. But it was in that moment where it's just like, well, you cannot sacrifice self at the expense of a job. And so for that interview, I remember I got my hair and I did it all natural and big. And I was like, I'm gonna come in, look, doing my little thing. I'm gonna get in full Shelee right now. We're gonna see what happens. And I think it was at that moment that I learned to do it scared, because please trust and believe that it was still scary. Like the interpretations, the responses, the reactions, again, power differences still existed. And it was this thing of like, you are gonna have to play this in a really interesting way, because I get it. There are things that are on the line for you that are important. You didn't spend the last however many years in grad school. You don't want to finish. Like, otherwise, what was the point? But at the same time, losing yourself, especially at this very crucial, like, developmental point for me, identity-wise, was so important to say, if it ain't you, it ain't right, though.
I really love that, right? Like you said a couple of things that we want folks to really pay attention to. Scared, voice quivering, and I said it anyway, right? That right there is the beginning of owning your power. I wonder, did you evaluate the risk, right? Like, did you think about the risk of in that moment, right? Like some of us, right? I remember at some point having to evaluate, what am I willing to lose, which will determine how far I'm willing to push. And then as I got older, right, like that bar got really far, right? Like we can push all the way, right? But did you pay attention in the moment and evaluate risk? Or did that inner voice just say, quivering, shaking, and afraid, this is the thing I have got to do in order to be true to who I am?
A combination of both, honestly. I think if I'm true to like who I know I am, I run just a little more anxious, right? So I am constantly surveying for threats, and that's just in a lot of different situations. And so like mental and emotional threat were very prominent there. And so it was always this game of like, how far without like feeling completely unraveled. And because I'm a human being, there were also times where it's just like, look, it's out now. So because I'm a human. And so I react and I respond to what is happening in the moments. And y'all wouldn't believe some of the outlandish shit that was said and spoken as though it was fact, as though it was true. And so at some points it was just like, I didn't even mean to go there, but like, you took me there. Right. So now here we are. And it's so interesting because it was such an interesting dynamic. I think I naturally have a very like bubbly personality, like people are drawn in a way. And so that dynamic was also really interesting because then you'd see people come back, oh, I agree with, you should have said that to your colleague then.
Right.
Because you hold the power. So why am I doing all the work? And that year, when I'm in a different place around that year. That was 2017, 2018. But while I was in that year, I was convinced that year broke me. Like I was convinced, like, yes, I found a voice, but in a way that I should not have had to.
That too. Absolutely.
And I think so many Black women especially are put in that position where it's like, oh, but you grew from it.
but isn't that part of the journey though? That the places that we get put into that we feel like I shouldn't have had to have been in that place in the first place. But if you weren't in that place, would you have found your voice in 2017? Or
maybe not in 2017. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like it really is, Crystal, like it's the both and.
Yeah.
Right? Like some of that I need for the growth and I shouldn't have to endure all the bullshit.
Correct.
Right? Like it's the both and.
Because there's some people who wouldn't have survived it. There were others who broke under it. There were people who should have had other opportunities and yet for whatever other reasons, because I've always been a little feistier. I mean, that's just been in my spirit. I was in my hair with it, but I was feisty. And so they got a lot of things out. But now I have to unlearn a lot of those things now because it did something. Like traumatic experiences have this way of like shifting you just a little bit. And what was shifted, there were gains, but there were also losses there. And I think that systems need to do better. I'm saying I'm not the system. Systems.
Right, not better.
Systems need to be dismantled, right? Because again, they weren't designed for us. So access to those things, we will forever have to go through additional hoops because they were not designed for us, right? So Francyne,
yes, ma'am.
You recognize that this is bullshit. This bar game is bullshit. And there's got to be that moment where sometimes I intentionally have to play the game to get at ... Or over here, I absolutely refuse to play the game because it's costing me my identity. And at the end of the day, how do I look in the mirror at myself? How do I look at other Black girls who are looking at me? What was that struggle like, right? Because it's still unobtainable and some of it we need for the resources of life. Yes. And so we continue to chase, right? Yeah. We remember the times when we would refuse to go into a job interview with curly hair. We intentionally straightened it, altered the look to fit the part because we needed the resource versus like, nope, how big can I make it, right? Like today is that day. How big
I know.
can I make it?
Goodness, yes, I'm looking like, yes, exactly.
What is that like for you? What was that like?
I think when I was in corporate America, I've always been kind of like the bubbly one. You know, everywhere I go, even today, when I interact with people, oh, hey, sunshine, you know, and I am. However, I'm not a pushover. And I think I developed that earlier on because I could have thrown that person off just, you know, having a notebook and taking notes. One, because I just want to keep track of the conversation and just understand, okay, this is what, so I can think about it. But I think it really started after, let's see, that was almost 13 years ago. And that was, got my bachelor's and then eventually moved on to get my master's. But I want to say it was around that time because, which 2005, I graduated from Wayne. 2005 on, I really, and because my background was journalism and broadcast, I naturally had a voice. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I just had to continue to speak up because I didn't really think anybody could tell me anything. I just really believe, I'm not quite sure exactly when it happened where I said, wait a minute, nobody's opinion of me matters more than the one I have for myself. I was not born second class. I was not created to be under anyone and let someone else tell me who I could be. And I think it really started when I want to say like maybe late 30s, like going into my 40s. But in that moment, when that happened to me, and it was devastating because it was like, wow, that was one of the first times, because everybody was telling me, go back and get your degree. And then, you can have access to the communications department, the jobs in the communications department, the coveted jobs. At least, and I'm looking around, it's like, wow, there are not even a lot of Black women in the executive positions. So what is my future here? And that was when I decided, wait a minute, I don't necessarily want to be put in this narrow box of what I can be. Mm-hmm. And even if I try and do everything that they say do, you tell me I didn't know certain terminology. What? I have the experience. I got the look, I have the quote unquote, I know how to present. I know how to create an environment. And I'm not even so much like, I'm not, and when I say create the environment, I'm not a docile Negro, but I know how to read the room. Mm-hmm. But it's like, wait a minute, it's still not going to be enough. So it's like, I need to create my own. Mm-hmm. And even then, there are some other things that, something to overcome. But I just the thought of someone else being able to tell me, this is who you are and this is how far you can go. And it's like, and no. So it had to be like my late 30s going into my 40s. And I think a lot of it is socialized. So that is part of the journey, as we're talking about, where we are trying to assimilate. And then it's like, that doesn't work, because I feel like I've lost a piece of myself in the process to assimilate.
So we know, right, that the bar is unattainable, that it's ever moving, right? That and it can be used against us at will, right?
Yeah.
So you're never going to be enough, right? And so I'm going to ask the doctor this question because she's a little younger than us, just a little. Right?
A lot of bit.
Right. A little younger than us, but because that it's never going to be enough, right? That at any moment the bar can be moved and changed. And so we know, it's almost like the things are stacked against you. How then, and I'm really also looking for input from those that are tuning in. How then do you go about and say, I'm just going to refuse to play, right? I'm gonna show up with as Francyne said, my personal best is my personal best, right? Mm-hmm. And as Michele says, I'm gonna give them everything they can handle, let them choke on the rest, and have enough faith to say, you know what, if they say no, that's their loss, and I'm on to the next one. Mm-hmm. Like, how does that work? Because I don't know that, you know, again, we're a little older. I don't know that we had that same thing at your age, but you sure. Knowing this in this day and age, how do you deal with that, and how do you push through anyway?
I think that's a really good question, because it's going to vary from person to person and situation to situation, because power, access, like those things do matter, because like you said, we exist within these systems. And if we really want to talk about it, the entire thing is, we say bullshit, but I don't know if we can say F. So I'm just I don't know if y'all there yet.
No. My mother would probably pass out, so no.
Yeah, that's
But the whole thing, right? Because realistically, we exist. If we live in America, I don't know what it's like in other places, but if we live in America, the entire thing is set up against us. Absolutely. It's embedded within the systems and the institutions and the laws and the governances and all of these different things. And I would be remiss to say that everybody can just be like middle finger to the world, because it's not like that. Correct. For everybody. And I think what it does is it sets, for those who it's not true for, I think that can foster a feeling of like trapped for them. And I don't ever want to do that, because realistically, I worked the system to be able to do this, right? I knew once I said psychology, I said, I'm gonna get a PhD, because I knew there was power in that. And so I can't act like my story is the same as everybody else's story, because not everybody else has that access. Right. But what we have an advantage of in this day and age is there's a lot more space, I think, than there has been historically. And so this idea of like our ability to create is amplified in the world that we live in right now. So, okay, maybe you still got to go and you work your job and you're the only one there and you're doing what you're doing. What are the things that you can do that can help support you get out of that eventually? It's not always, oh, I'm out. Sometimes it's like, I'm gonna be out, but let me put these little chips in order first. Give me a second.
Gotta have a strategy.
Okay. Yeah. Because trap doesn't feel good. I don't care where it is, who it is, trap does not feel good. And so often when it feels like I don't have any other choice, that's what that feeling is. Well, I gotta do this. I gotta be here. This is my life. And we get stuck in the weight of our reality, that it takes away our ability to dream and cultivate, like within ourselves, the sense of agency. Shout out to Miss Harper. Takes away that sense of agency. And when we lose our agency, we become real passively existing in our own lives. And that's a sad, sad thing.
Yeah. I want to switch this just a little bit, because, you know, we are clearly running out of time.
Fastest hour, you said it. Good Lord.
Yeah. We've talked about the bullshit bar, and it's systemic, and it's, you know, other folks, and it's man-made. But how much of that bullshit bar do we perpetuate and create for ourselves?
So it's called internalized racial oppression, where we continue to live into the values of the dominant culture, thinking that that's what we have to do. And so we'll disrupt and work against our own best interest to chase that thing. So, right, we have to do that reflective work. Where am I accountable, right? Yeah. So I do, if you want to buy the bag, buy the bag. Mm-hmm. If you want to straighten your hair. If you want to chase the bar, I'm not even gonna tell you don't chase it. I want you to evaluate the cost. And can you afford to pay it not only today, but 5 years from now? Generationally, can your children afford for you to pay it? I really like Dr. Shelee talking about the space that's gotten created, because we as Black people, as a collective, when the world thought we could never operate as a collective, and small spaces are starting to do that, to create the space. We have to evaluate. I am culpable more times than I want to be, Crystal.
Yeah.
Right? Either because I want to access it, or it felt easy to go along to get along in that moment. I have to own that. And if we're not doing that reflective piece, that internalized racial oppression will say to me, I have to ... and I have to judge you for not doing it my way, right? Like, we will hold each other at a standard, right?
And then demonize the others.
Right? For not chasing the unattainable anyway, right? Again, so I'm not ever going to tell anybody what not to do, because like Doc said, we are all individuals. We all have our own stories. I just want us to always be thinking about what is the cost, because it's costing. And can you afford to pay it a generation?
Yeah.
Can your next generation afford to pay it for you?
And so much of it is awareness when you think about it. Like, I do a lot of awareness conversations with my clients, and like in my teachings and my trainings, because everything goes back to this: why am I doing what I'm doing? And choice, because so often when we're operating on default, we remove choice from the option. And when we remove choice, we're just running on autopilot. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because that's where all of these messages that we have internalized, things that have been conditioned, things that have been ingrained, they're just operating at this very subconscious level. And that's all of us. We all got stuff. If we don't pay enough attention to it, those things will then run your life. Give yourself the freedom of choice by like becoming more self-aware of how you think, what you do, why you do it, and then make choices based on like, does that actually line up with my values, with my morals, with the things that I want for myself? And if it doesn't, check it.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are, getting ready to run out of time, and we have not had a chance to hear. Francyne, how can people find you? Tell us a little bit more about your professional spaces and how folks can find you if they want to access what you offer.
Okay, FrancyneWalker.com is the website. At Francyne Walker TV, Instagram, Francyne Walker on Facebook and YouTube, and Francyne Walker Communications at gmail.com.
I love it.
So, Francyne, when you say Francyne Walker Communications, what specifically do you do for, I'm a business owner, I need what from Francyne Walker Communications?
Well, it all depends. It could be a business plan. It could be presentation. One of the things that I really love to do is to really hone in on the presentation of communications, because there is still a standard, and I won't say a standard based on oppression, but a standard of communicating, presentation, trust. If you're really in the business of creating a business and building a business that is sustainable, not just something run by night, you really want to make sure you have a consistent brand that communicates integrity. And trust. Can I trust this business with the services? Well, if I go to your website but you don't have a website, you only have a Facebook page. Okay, what are you posting on the face? Is it your personal page or is it a business page? Because what I've done in the past is specifically helped women-owned businesses, because for some reason, women just seem to be a little bit more serious, in my opinion, and experience. I'm not saying that I won't work with male-owned businesses because that's not true, but you got to be serious. Don't use this as an opportunity to hit on me. We about to, let's secure the bag.
Yeah.
Let's secure the bag. Let's create some some generational wealth. Let's build a legacy. You got a great idea. Let's make it happen. Let's put it into some kind of business plan so that you can secure the money so that you can build that business out. And then let's look at strategy. That's something that has happened where it's like you're not only communicating a business plan, but you're telling me what you want long term. So it's like, well, let's do it this way. So that's one aspect of Francyne Walker Communications. There's speech writing, there's social media management, marketing, presentation. How do you communicate? How do you speak? And as far as, do you convey confidence? You don't have to speak like I speak, but do you convey confidence? Do you feel confident in yourself and what you're saying? And then get clear about what you're trying to say and what you're trying to communicate. So that Francyne Walker Communications it's anything that has to be written, but it's also the emphasis on speaking. Being confident on camera is another aspect. I really would like to develop a kind of like a course, a self-paced course where you're able to build and maybe work one-on-one, but also the self-paced where you're able to just kind of do it on your own, where you develop that confidence. And so that's something that I've endeavored for 2023, and I don't want to take all of the time, but 2023 to really help people say what they need to say, whether it's online, on paper, in front of an audience, in front of a camera. So many times people will say, I've got this situation, and they don't know how to address it. It's like, well, it sounds like we need to write you a letter, to change the trajectory of what has happened in your life. So that's one of the things I really do love. It's like, no, say this, not that. Get very specific on what it is you want to say, what you want, and then speak to that, ask for that.
So the reason that I asked you to go into a little depth on what you do is because one of the things that I'm extremely clear about is we, especially in the Black community with Black businesses, we need to build more, we need to have more, we need to be able to scale.
Yes.
So that we can hire more of us.
Yes.
So that some of these things that we go through don't necessarily happen. So, yeah. And I think you can help with that branding part and being able to communicate what it is businesses want to communicate. So thank you for that. Michele, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Dr. Shelee, how can the good folks find you?
Well, the easiest way to find me. So one, if you want to reach me via email, it is hello@thementalconnect.com. I also am on Instagram and Twitter and the Facebook, and it's at Dr. Shelee, DrShelee. I know that's going to throw a couple people, so it's DrShelee, and then also thementalconnect.com. And so what I do is I'm a licensed psychologist, inner wellness coach, and I offer one-on-one coaching as well as a group coaching program for individuals. They're separate things. And so individuals who may want to start something, they have an idea, they have a vision, they have a dream, but they're stuck in fear and self-doubt, and it's keeping them from executing on that. They're stuck in that planning stage of things. And so I help them, one, get out of their own way by really working through to identify the root of what's keeping them stuck. It's not a matter of laziness. We call things lazy, and realistically, it's avoidance. What are we avoiding? Why are we avoiding it? And how can we kind of get around that so that we can set up systems and routines and strategies that help get you closer to where it is that you want to be. In addition to that, there's a separate coaching that's about identity and improvement. And so that focuses on self-awareness, self-compassion, building self-love and self-trust. So all of these things that are important for our relationship with ourselves, which involves really going back and unlearning some of the messages that we've internalized about ourselves, about who it is that we need to be. And then the group coaching program piece of that, one, community is super important. I will always advocate for the need for community. And I think people have come to this idea that healing should be done like in isolation, and it should, trauma is relational, but so is healing. And so when we find ourselves in the right places and spaces where we can support one another in our journeys to be better for ourselves, and whatever that better looks like, that is a space for that. And so the links for all of those things are available, like on my Instagram page and on the different social media pages and whatnot. But if anybody is interested, I encourage them to come find me because I would love to work with you.
Nice.
Thank you. Well, here we are, 3 minutes left, and what I promised you was going to be the fastest hour of your day, and we could have just kept talking. The pursuit of the bullshit bar is forever in front of us, and it is our responsibility individually and as a collective to pay attention to the ways in which it's disrupting us from being our very best selves. And at the end of the day, that's what these conversations are about. Learning from amazing Black women what it means to live into their greatness, to share their stories, to share their successes, and of course, laugh and cry through the failures, because that's all a part of the journey. And recognizing that you have the power within you to create space, to create your own bar, and have the skills and ability to navigate the rest of this world in a way that is effective and does not cause you trauma and allows you to heal from any trauma that you have in the past. What an amazing night. What an amazing way to kick off another series as we enter into 2023. So very grateful to have been in both of your presence. Crystal Gunn, wrap this up for us.
The bullshit bar.
Bullshit.
Thank you, ladies, for your input, your candor, your revealing your stories, and how you pushed past the bullshit. And part of what our job is, and I'm specifically right now talking to Black women, part of what our job is to set that bullshit bar standard aside, redefine it, and call it and own it as our own, and create that new standard. And y'all know me, that standard is that standard of you being your amazing and authentic self. Because I believe when you show up that way, right, you ultimately winds up getting everything that you own, everything that you deserve, everything that God has for you. And I think when we don't show up that way, we shortchange ourselves, we shortchange our daughters, right? And Michele talked about those generations to come, and we shortchange those generations. So thank you so very much for being here. Amazing Women Speak is sponsored by the Amazing Woman Network, which was created to unite and empower Black women globally for the betterment of the world, under our pillars of reclaiming our personal power, right? To push that bullshit bar aside, reclaiming our personal power, mind, body, and spirit, reclaiming our financial power, and increasing our social involvement. And we strive to assist every Black woman in owning, honoring, and executing her amazing. Your amazing isn't designed or determined by what someone else says. Your amazing was established at birth. God saw it fit to bring you into this life as your amazing self. And I thank you for letting that shine. You can find Amazing Women Speak on YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, and Roku. Go back, watch some episodes. I promise you, you will be blessed as a result of that. Thank you again for tuning in. I am Crystal Gunn. I am a Black woman, and I own my amazing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, ladies. Crystal, as always, I will close these conversations out by thanking you for your obedience to the call in your life. In a world where we've been socialized to tear one another down, to have to swallow our stories with no place to share our greatness, to be vulnerable, you've created such a platform. I am forever grateful for the lives that you touch, for women who don't even get to be in the room with you. You, my friend, are absolutely amazing, and I remain grateful for the gift of you and your obedience to the gift that God put on your life. My name is Michele Harper. I absolutely love being a part of these conversations. I absolutely love and accept the calling that God has put on my life to show up and own my agency, to give permission to other women to do the same. I am Michele Harper. I am a Black woman, and I own every bit of my amazing. Dr. Shelee.
Thank you all so much for having me. This was an amazing conversation. Again, could have kept going. And so thank you for holding this space because it's needed and it's necessary. Yes, my name is Shelee-Ann, Dr. Shelee-Ann.
Yes.
Yes, doctor.
I am
The doctor's in the
Black
house.
woman, and on my own, without any bells, whistles, or accolades, I still own my amazing.
Francyne.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this podcast this evening. As Dr. Shelee said, community is important, and this community starts here, where we show others that yes, you can be amazing too. My name is Francyne Walker. I am a Black woman, and I absolutely, unequivocally, my amazing.
Facebook, thank you so much, ladies, for the voices that you shared in the chat. We're very grateful. We've paid attention. We will unpack those comments over time because they continue to show up in ways. So keep joining us every single week. Keep bringing your voice in through that platform. You are a part of this conversation, and we absolutely too find you amazing. Crystal.
Be sure to mark your calendars for next Sunday at 7 p.m. where we will be discussing stalking and human trafficking. You all really want to tap into this because it is out of absolute control, and we need to do more than be aware and just talk about it. So join us next week. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you so much. Goodbye for now.
Bye for now. Take care.
Bye.